And just so it could be interesting this morning to see where that goes, but it's going to be good. A couple quick things we want to I mean, I mentioned this last week, I think, or online, but thank you for your giving. We heard again from the Housing Hub this week, and just because we were able to get an air conditioner for a participant who just, the heat, they have some degenerative health issues, and the heat was really negatively affecting them. And so they said thanks, but even this week they reached out again and just said, can you please express our thank? The participant has been saying, thank you, thank you. It's made a huge difference. I mean, today probably don't notice it as much, but it's going to get warm again. And so we were able to do that because of your faithful giving and generosity and, helping with different things going on. And so appreciate that. We are going to be involved in a fundraiser if you want to get involved. It's Saturday, August the 7th, and the ministry, friends of ours, it's a ministry called Ally Global, and it's primarily in Nepal, but they, girls that have been rescued from sex trafficking, they provide safe homes and education for them. So that's what they're involved in. And so on Saturday, August the 7th, it's kind of a move. It's all kind of a distance, however you want to do it. So it's basically you say, I'm going to raise some money, and then you go for a walk, you go for a jog, you go for a motorbike ride, you go for a rollerblade, you go whatever you want to do. So so we'll say more about it, but it's a great opportunity to help some people find sanctuary, really, these girls, and so they need a safe houses, because otherwise, and they've experienced this, they don't take them unwillingly out of it, but you take them out, and that's all they know, and so too quickly you go back to that, and so they need to have safe homes where they can spend some years and an education and together, but we all want to do it together, and then you'll ride, you'll walk, you'll motorbike, whatever it is. Go for a ride in your car, go out to Agassiz, get a coffee, come back and donate $50 or however you want to do that. So that's good. Yeah, that's good. We're carrying on in our sermon series on through Mark, following Jesus. When I was a kid, there were a couple games we used to play. Played lots of games, but two I was thinking about this week. One was Simon Says, and one was Follow the Leader. And we played these games, and I was thinking about these two games this week because they kind of represent sometimes there it goes, the bucket fell. It was awesome. Yeah, well done. They kind of represent our approach sometimes to Jesus, or our sense, perhaps our perspective of his approach to us, and sometimes it's our approach to the world, to people. That's with Simon Says, somebody stands off from the group and tells people what they should do. And says, you should do this. Simon says, do this, do this. And while those instructions and directions are being given, you're carefully watching to see if people do them so that you can count them out. Hey, you didn't do what you were supposed to. You didn't do what you should do. And Simon Says it's that kind of, someone is standing here telling others what they should do and watching to see if they'll do it, but you're really critically watching because, you didn't do it right. I didn't, or find some legal loophole. I didn't say Simon Says. And find some little loophole to count people out. And so that was one, again, we played that as kids. It was a good game. It's not a great approach to the world, and it's not a great perspective of how Jesus approached to us. The other game is Follow the Leader. And Follow the Leader, instead of someone standing off and giving instructions, you're almost invited on this journey. It almost someone says, hey, you know what? Come along with me and watch me, stay close to me, and whatever I do, you try to replicate. And in that sense, the leader, whoever they are, and the people who are following are invited into this same thing. There's not this, I'm here, you're there, you should, Simon Says. There's just, hey, stick close. And with Follow the Leader, you want to get as close as you can, and your eyes stay fixed on what the leader is doing so that you can replicate and emulate what they are doing. And there's that sense of a journey. And in Jesus' invitation to us to follow him, he's inviting us into a life of Follow the Leader, not a game of Simon Says. He does not stand off and say, hey, you guys, you should, and now what I want you to do is stand off from the world and say to them, you should. We're invited into this journey of following Jesus, and as we follow him, others say, hey, I want to join you, and fine. It's like one of those big, conga lines. It just keeps getting longer and longer and longer, and we set this example, and it draws people in. And so today we're going to look at another example in Jesus' life where we clearly see him calling us into a game, not a game, but into a journey of follow the leader. And he invites us to do something that he himself has done first. He doesn't ask us to do things he hasn't done, won't do, is unwilling to do. But he says, hey, I'm going to do this first. I'm going to set an example, and I'm going to invite you to follow. It's in Mark chapter 8, verses 31 to 38, and I'll read it. Jesus is talking to his disciples. Then Jesus began to tell them that the Son of Man must suffer many terrible things and be rejected by the elders, the leading priests, and the teachers of the religious law. He'd be killed, but 3 days later he'd rise from the dead. As he talked about this openly with his disciples, Peter took him aside and began to reprimand him for saying such things. Jesus turned around, looked at his disciples, then reprimanded Peter. Get away from me, Satan. Pretty stunning rebuke. Hey, I thought we were friends. He said, you are seeing things merely from a human point of view, not from God, not from God's. Then, calling the crowd to join his disciples, he said, if any of you wants to be my follower, you must give up your own way. Take up your cross and follow me. If you try to hang on to your life, you will lose it. But if you give up your life for my sake and for the sake of the good news, the gospel, you will save it. And what does it benefit if you've gained the whole world but lose your soul? Is anything worth more than your soul? So in many instances in our kind of following Jesus, and we've kind of been looking at these different examples of him, we have seen him generously, radically serving people. We've seen him expressing incredible love to people. We've seen him welcoming outcasts and lifting burdens off the oppressed. We've seen him displaying his power over the powers, and it's been amazing. We've seen him calming the storm and whatnot. It's been amazing. He's just expressed his love, his kindness, his embrace, and his power. It's just been amazing. But in this instance, he takes a slightly different tone. He now begins to talk about the cost of following him. It's been amazing to see this display of, wow, he's loving, he's serving, he's healing, he's performing miracles. But now he says, okay, that's good, is good. But now let me tell you about the cost, because there is a cost of following him. But before he tells us about the cost to us, he tells us the price he is going to pay. He's setting an example. Before he says, hey, you need to know it's going to cost you everything, he says, this is going to cost me everything. And I'm more than willing to pay this price. I'm going to set the example. And when he begins to talk about what it was going to cost him, that he was going to be rejected, he was going to suffer greatly, he was going to die, that would have been completely foreign to the mindset of his disciples. Remember, they were looking for a Messiah. They were looking for a liberator, someone who was going to come and throw off the oppressive powers of Rome over them and enact his kingdom, and just kind of, they're looking like, wait a minute, no, you aren't the one who's going to pay the price. We want them to pay the price. We want it to cost them, Rome and everybody else. But so it would have been like, wait a minute, you're going to pay the price? You're going to die? And it would have been this foreign idea that other people would not be paying, but he would be paying. That's why Peter couldn't fathom it. He comes to Jesus, he says, whoa, there's no way that can be the plan. Peter's response was the natural way of seeing the world, the natural way of responding to the situations in front of us, the natural way of thinking. He was simply seeing the world through the worldview he grew up with, seeing the world through the lens of the culture of the day. And in one of the strongest rebukes that we see in Jesus' life, he says to Peter, get thee behind me. You're only seeing things from a human perspective. You're only seeing things through the lens of the culture of the day. When I look at Jesus' response to Peter, it kind of alerts me to the fact that, okay, Jesus obviously feels quite strongly about the dangers of seeing the world through the lens of our culture, of seeing the world through the lens of what we've been raised. He says, whoa, and he rebukes Peter for it. He warns them, and he alerts us to the susceptibility we all have. We're all vulnerable to see the world from a human perspective, because we're humans. We're all vulnerable to see the situations of our life through the lens of the culture we've been raised in. And Jesus says, whoa, that's not godly. There's another influence working on your thought patterns. There's another influence clouding and shaping your perspective. And as Jesus gives Peter this rebuke for his way of thinking, he moves from the price he was willing to pay and now begins to talk about the price that those who would follow him must pay. to deny ourselves, to take up our cross, and follow Jesus. And again, this goes completely against our way of thinking. Everything we do in life is geared around paying the least possible price. Whatever it is, even if it's organic foods you want to get the best deal you can. It doesn't mean we want the least, but whatever we want to pay the least. We want the best deal possible. We want as much convenience as possible. We want it as comfortable as possible. We want it as on our terms as possible. That's the human way of thinking. And that's our whole North American culture is based around, hey, this is convenience. I was talking to a fellow in town who owns a grocery market, and he said over the years, he's seen different, they used to sell lots of produce, and they still do. But now he says it's pre-made meals. Pre-made meals are the big things, and again, they're healthy, they're good and all that. But he says people want convenience. They just want to come home and it's ready to go, and they don't necessarily want to go to a restaurant. It's a little cheaper than that, but they don't want to go to cook. So again, that sense of, I want this as easy as possible, as quick as possible. And that nothing should impose on how we feel. That nothing should impose on our comfort and our sense of what we want. We feel entitled to that. In fact, the sense of suffering and discomfort, we feel like, no, that'd be improper invasion. There's nothing appropriate about that. That's this, I'm entitled to live a life free from that. And Jesus says, okay, you need to know, if you're going to follow me, it's going to cost you. You're going to have to deny yourself, and to deny ourselves. I was thinking about that again this week. The age we live in has made denying yourself a hate crime. Like, what do you mean? No, to deny, these are my inalienable rights as a person, and I shouldn't ever deny myself anything. We've made our feelings and whatnot, our desires, the top of the mountain, and that's the most. And Jesus says, no, you're going to deny yourself. But the cry of our age is, don't deny yourself. Don't make things awkward. Be your true self. Give place to whatever you're feeling, whatever you're desiring. And it seems like if anyone challenges us on that, you're like, whoa, that's not right. And Jesus says, no, if you're going to be my follower, there's going to be an element of denying yourself. And now we'll look at that again in a minute, because it's important that even as we were just singing, I open up my heart to you, Jesus, have your way in my life, that whatever we are being asked to deny ourselves, that's Jesus putting his finger on areas of our life and saying, okay, I would like you to deny yourself. That's not me looking at your life and saying, I think it's about time you denied yourself this. Or you look at me. Again, this is not Simon Says. This is not, hey, you should. No, this is follow the leader. And Jesus denied himself. He loved us at a cost to himself. And he invites us to follow that example of loving him at a cost to ourselves, of loving others at a cost to ourselves. Jesus, again, lets his followers know that we need to deny ourselves and take up our cross in following him. Now, taking up our cross has a different meaning today than it did then. Lots of times, everybody's got their cross to bear. I went to Starbucks this morning. They're out of goat milk, so I had to use soy. Well, everyone has their cross to bear. And we use these terms like, any kind of, I couldn't get to, the fastest internet. It was, everyone has their cross to bear, and all these kinds of things. I still have to roll the windows down on my vehicle. Well, everyone has their cross to bear. And this term has become like any inconvenience, any discomfort. Well, everyone's got their cross to bear. Well, that's not what it meant in Jesus' time. In Jesus' day, the cross was a method of execution for some of the most, vilest of crimes. And so when Jesus says, take up your cross, he's saying, this could cost you your life. You need to know that following me may cost you your life. It may lead you down a road where you're willing to do that. This wouldn't have been easy to follow him, because taking up your cross in Jesus' day wasn't a minor inconvenience. It was like, this could cost me everything. And Jesus lays it all out. Again, he doesn't try to trick people into following him. He's like, hey, if you want to follow me, this is just the reality of it. Now, there are many places. In fact, I saw there's a list, the top 50 countries in our world where it's the most dangerous to be a Christian. There are people that lose their lives every day because they follow Jesus. There are countries that they say close to thousands of people, followers of Jesus, are martyred every year simply because of following Jesus. So there are parts of the world where taking up your cross to follow Jesus may literally cost you your life. Now in North America, highly unlikely that that will be the case. It might, but it would be rare, far, in other parts of the world. But taking up our cross may mean, again, I'd be ready to die for him. Okay. What if he doesn't want you to die, but he would just like you to surrender that opinion? Oh, okay. What if he doesn't want you to die, but he would just like you to deny those feelings? What if he doesn't want you to deny, but he wants you to stay in an awkward place of disagreement, but maintain relationship? What about those kinds of things? What about if he's saying, I don't want you to, in North America, this, again, it might, he says, follow me, it may cost you your life. And in some parts of the world it does. For us, though, would we be willing to say, I'm going to stay in an awkward place where we don't see things the same way, but I'm going to maintain relationship? I've got some opinions on things. I've got some perspectives on things. But if you've got different ones, that's all right. I'm going to deny those things. I'm going to take up my cross and follow Jesus because I'm going to keep my eyes fixed on Jesus. See, it is so easy to live, and I'm guilty of this, to live a life centered around what I'm feeling. I wake up, again, it's a great greeting, and it's an appropriate greeting. How you feeling? And I'm feeling good. But again, that would be, and again, it's a good greeting, so we're not trying to make it awkward. Next time you ask someone how you're feeling, I shouldn't have asked that. But even that, it's like, is how I'm feeling the most important thing? How I'm feeling is important. And again, I'm not trying to in any way, we recognize we walk with compassion, we walk with empathy, we walk with grace, and so how people are feeling is very important. We're not trying to, for one moment, say, it doesn't matter. No. But, so again, this is us putting the lens of Jesus on ourselves. To others, you say, how you're feeling, that's the most important thing to me. Because I want to love you at a cost to myself. So how you're feeling is incredibly important to me. How I'm feeling as a follower of Jesus, well done. I like to see the feet come back. It's a good deal. This is awesome. But how I'm feeling, each of us, they say, no, I'm going to take up my cross. Our feelings will always follow our focus. That's just the life, the journey of life. Feelings follow focus. And what Jesus is saying to us is, hey, if you want to follow me, keep your focus on me. And feelings will come up along the way. Just they will. But keep your eyes on me. Keep following the leader. Keep emulating what I'm doing. And there'll be some feelings that will come up. They say, that's uncomfortable. And in each of those instances, we'll need to say, okay, am I ready? Am I able? Am I willing to deny myself and take up my cross and bring my feelings into line with the example Jesus is setting before me? This is what picking up our cross and denying ourselves mean for us today. And we're going to run into all kinds of situations where feelings and all of those things were going to rear themselves up. And so it's imperative that we remain cross-centered. We keep focus on Jesus and his ultimate expression of love, which is the cross. We're going to have communion in just a couple minutes as we just kind of, again, focus on Jesus, but focus on Jesus on the cross, where he demonstrated, he said, here's the example I'm going to set. I'm going to love you at a cost to myself. I'm going to willingly love you at a cost to myself. See, a cross-centered focus, a cross-centered faith makes demands of me every single day. It just does. It's a call to die to myself in increasingly greater measures. Again, that's not me saying to you where you should die to yourself, or you saying to me where I should die to myself. That's us individually going before Jesus saying, I open up my heart to you. Have your way. And he'll put his finger, his gentle touch, the loving, words will come to us. And it's going to draw us Increasingly, a cross-centered faith is going to draw us increasingly out of our comfort zones and on a journey closer and closer to the feet of strangers, in need of empathy, in need of compassion, in need of care, in need of burdens being lifted. And it's a faith that will tell us how to live, a faith that will take who I am and transforms me by his love into his character. Now, let me just say this as we talk about denying ourselves and willingly suffering for Jesus, and even to the point of it may cost us our lives. That's all true. But in no way, shape, or form is this an invitation to be abused or to be victimized. That is not it at all. Jesus, when he set the example for us, he said, "No one takes my life from me. I lay it down." Jesus he suffered greatly, but Jesus would never have considered himself a victim. He said, no, I'm willing to, at a cost to myself, love you. This wasn't someone remaining in an abusive relationship. This wasn't someone saying, no, I'm a doormat, you can victimize me. No, that is not the life that Jesus calls us to. This is, now again, as we love people, there will be a cost to us. But that's not a call to stay in a place of victimization and abuse. Jesus shows us his call to deny ourselves and to pick up our cross is to value others at a cost to ourselves. And when followers of Jesus, this community of people following Jesus, the church, when we love God like this, when we love others this way, valuing our love for them at a cost to ourselves, it can't help but be noticed because it's different than the culture of our world. Our world says, I'll love you as long as it's convenient to me. I'll love you as long as it's comfortable. I'll love you as long as it's not awkward. I'll love you as long as you look and sound and think like me. And now followers of Jesus say, no, I'm going to love you, and it's going to cost me. And this will get noticed. This kind of love will stir up the indignation of the religious. And you'll be open up to accusations of being too liberal, being too accepting, being too inclusive, all those kinds of things. But it's not that. But while it may rise the indignation of the religious, it will rise curiosity in those who don't yet know Jesus. How do you love so well? What is it about you that causes you to leave your comfort zones and be found at the feet of strangers, caring for them? And this stirs up this curiosity. And it is an absolutely reckless love. It really is. And that sense that it just doesn't matter how much it costs. It's not like apathy, oh, who cares? But it is, this doesn't matter how much it costs. That's what Jesus showed us, a reckless love where he said, it doesn't matter how much this costs. It could cost me everything, which it did. And this is what Jesus calls us to do, to deny ourselves, to take up our cross, to love others at a cost to ourselves, just as he did. So there's two sides, again, there's more than two sides, but there's two parts that we're just going to ask you to ponder quietly yourself for just a moment. There is the loving others at a cost to ourselves. And so how that looks, how that draws each of us from our comfort zones, whatever and wherever they are, to closer to the feet of strangers. Again, we're going to just leave Holy Spirit to speak to each of us about that. Then there's the other side where he says, okay, but it's denying yourself. So then those things, okay, what in me, Jesus, what do you want to put your finger on today? And just allow his love. Again, whatever he puts his finger on something in our lives. Have you ever had a bruise? And you know, I remember in school, this, again, I'm going to talk about vaccinations, but I'm talking about vaccinations in grade 6. So no current relevancy to what is going on today. Whether you have or haven't, that's fine. But I remember we got vaccinations in school, and the next day, your arm was sore. And well-meaning friends would always come by and just take a shot at the arm. Does that hurt? You know, so everybody knew this was a tender spot, but that was the spot that they were going to poke the hardest. As we say to Jesus, here's my heart, he knows there's some tender spots in our lives. He is not going to be like those well-meaning friends in grade 6 who just, that's where he's going to put the hardest. He's going to come gently and lovingly and carefully and say, hey, let's walk this forward. There we go. There's an element of cost just in being here this morning. For some of you, you're like, okay, yeah, exactly. This isn't quite as comfortable as we'd like. Exactly. Oh, boy. This was the first time in the Gospel of Mark where Jesus really begins to turn the corner. He does it in a couple other places, but where he begins to say, hey, there's a cost. There's a cost that I'm going to pay. As he talks about being rejected, suffering, going to the cross, and dying. But he also says there's a cost I'm inviting you to pay. We talk lots about the inclusive love of Jesus, the embrace of Jesus, his love, and all of that is true. But there's a cost to following Jesus. The cost of discipleship, the cost of having our lives increasingly line up to what he looks like. To say, okay, this is a journey of follow the leader. So I'm going to look like him. And along the way, I'm going to have some desires. These things are going to stir up. But I bring them in line with Jesus, whatever they are. And so I'm going to invite the worship team to come, and we're going to worship one more song. And then we're going to have communion together. I'll just back this up. And as they lead us in this song, if I put this here, Maddie, is this okay? Sorry, I can't get in front of the speakers, and I don't want to go in the rain, like some of you. Still not ready to deny myself to that level. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We want to be known as followers of Jesus. Yeah. We're not inviting the world to a game of Simon Says, where we stand off and say, you should, you should, you should. We want to demonstrate by our own lives that our eyes are fixed on Jesus as best we can, and as he sets this beautiful example before us, that we, with the grace and power that he provides, follow his example more and more and more. And there'll be challenges with all of that. There'll be things within us that will well up and say, I'd rather not. That's going to be all of those things. And that's where denying ourselves, taking up our cross, comes into play. Where we say, okay, I'd rather not, but that's the example he just set before me. And I'm not going to get it right. And I may do pretty well this time, but the next 3 or 4, I'm going to blow it. That's all right. We just keep following the leader and drawing close to him. Because he loves us at a cost to himself and invites us to love others at a cost to ourselves. And so let's worship together, and then I'm going to come back and we're going to have communion as we just, again, look to the cross, look to the price he paid so that we could experience his love and walk closely with him.
Spirit sound, rushing wind, far apart, fall within, hold